And I'm going to introduce, let's see, I'm going to introduce our wonderful presenters. So yay, we're so excited to have Kelly Smith and Judy Hall with us. Kelly is a skilled senior leader with over 25 years of change management experience with deep expertise in digital transformation, merger and acquisitions, and executive coaching. She's a director and engagement leader at ProSci, where she works with clients to build enterprise change capabilities and help them mature into change-ready cultures. She has advised companies in the financial, manufacturing, and retail space, as well as nonprofit organizations and state and local government agencies. Judy has over 20 years of experience in the public sector, working in the areas of strategic planning, partnership development, program evaluation, continuous improvement, and change management. She currently manages a stellar team at the Department of Health that is working to build change and management and continuous improvement capabilities across the organization. Welcome, ladies. We're so happy you're here, and we look forward to this presentation. Without further ado, I will pass the mic to Kelly.
Good morning, and thank you, Talia. I appreciate that very warm welcome. We're both very happy to be with you today. I will start sharing my screen so we can get right down to it. A little bit more about me. I am a director and engagement leader. Been with ProSci for a little over 3 years, but prior to that, I was in the private sector. Judy has been one of my wonderful clients, so it's a pleasure to be with Judy today. I am from Columbus, Georgia, so it's afternoon for me, but I'm happy to be with y'all. I also am a wife to a United States Air Force colonel, and also a mom to a United States Air Force pilot. And then my son is, I have another son that's currently at LSU. So I'm a boy mom and all that that means. And my favorite time is to really spend time with them at the beach and enjoy the Gulf. So I like the warm, sunny weather, but I love to visit with my friends in Washington State. So, Judy, tell us a little bit about you.
Let's make sure I'm off mute. Yep. So I lead the Organizational Agility Office within DOH. And as was said before, I've been in state government for a very long time. And I do have a stellar team, which I'm really excited about. I live here in Olympia, and have a number of hobbies. My children are moved out of the home and on into their own lives, and I don't have grandchildren yet, so I find all of these other activities to keep me busy. One of the things I do love is my daughter herds sheep with border collies, and so I get to dog sit the border collies quite a bit. Love that and love to travel. So glad to be here today. Really glad to be able to tell her story with Kelly.
Great. Thank you, Judy. And it is a great story, one where we've been partnering to build change capability at Washington State Department of Health. So we're going to learn a little bit more about her journey, the progress that they've made. But before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about what is change capability, why is it so important, and how it supports lean principles. So why could change capability help you be more successful in your lean efforts, your process improvement efforts within your organization? Just a little, if you're not familiar with ProSci, we have been in the business of change for over 25 years. Our information is based on research. We started off as a research company, got into the training business, and now, at least for the past 5 or 6 years, we've also been doing some advisory work. We're partnering with organizations to help them be more successful, and then support them on project work or building change capability in their organization. And that's really where my expertise has been in building that change capability. The objectives for today, we really want to talk about what change capability means for an organization, discover how it supports your lean processes, go over a couple of steps for the journey that you're going to see, how we applied those steps with Judy and the department, and then also leave you with where you can find some additional support if you want to start working on change capability for your organization. So what is change capability? It really means that you can effectively manage and implement change across various levels and of initiatives. It's not just doing it one time really good or saying, we change all the time, so we do it well. It really is embedding it into your practices, your culture, your operations, and it helps you ensure success with all of your changes. So what does it look like when you're doing it well? Well, first of all, you'll have consistent success on your change efforts. Whether it's a process change or a digital effort, there's always a reason why we do something. When you're going in and looking at processes, you're looking for, reduced cycle time, increased efficiencies. There's always a reason why we're doing something that we're doing. And so what we find is that if we can focus on the people side of change, it increases the likelihood that we're going to get that ROI and we'll have greater stakeholder satisfaction and achieve those results from that project. So when we really focus on the people and bring them along, we have consistent success on our change efforts. It also means throughout the organization that we have a very structured approach in how we address change. So it's not kind of willy-nilly or, oh, let's communicate something on Monday for training on Tuesday for go live on Wednesday. That's not really an effective way of doing change management. It is having an approach that's structured, that we have, and that gives us those higher level of change management because there's a shared language and there's a formal process of way of addressing this. Additionally, we're going to see that integration with our processes, whether it's through your defining your strategic plan and thinking about what that means to the organization and the people implications of that strategy, or making it part of a gate process of moving forward with a particular project to make sure you have things in place to move the people from their current state to the future state. Or it could be just where in your processes do you have checkpoints along the way and tools that you're leveraging to make sure that everybody who's impacted is accounted for and supported. Other ways, you've got great leadership and sponsorship. The leaders and sponsors of the organization clearly know what their role is in leading change. There's active and visible sponsorship. They're able to articulate what we're doing, why we're doing. They're showing up. They're not just there for the kickoff and then there for the party at the end. They are committed to the change throughout, not only in the resources, but also the funding to support. A lot of times we have leaders that are very willing to invest millions of dollars in a change effort. And then when you say, wow, well, this is going to affect everybody, we need to also invest in change dollars. Like, no, you're going to figure out how to do it without it. That's not a leadership that will support the people. And so it's important that leaders understand their role and how they need to drive change. And it's all the way down to the frontline leaders too, because we know from our research that it's the frontline leaders that have the most impact over people's behaviors and influence their mindset and reinforce when it's a new process. So it's very important that leaders throughout the organization have this capability. It's really a competency that they need to have. A lot of times we find that that's where the biggest area of resistance comes from, is that middle management deciding not to follow along with a new process. So ensuring that you have that at all levels helps drive your success for the efforts that you're leading. And then, back to the structured approach, if you have a structured approach, it gives you this common language and tools. Employees can speak the common language. You're utilizing standard tools and processes. Your leaders and your sponsors get familiar with them and they know what to expect when there's a change because we're all saying the same thing. And it facilitates really better communication and understanding across the organization. So whether it's leveraging ADKAR, which is ProSci's methodology, awareness is our ProSci's model, or somebody else's, at least we're all on the same page and we're speaking that same language. And ultimately, what you find is you've got a change-ready culture. Change becomes easier. People are ready, more resilient. They have the necessary skills and they have the ability to lead and then to adapt. And we see that in organizations that have higher levels of maturity and are able to make the change and be more successful. So if you don't mind, I'd really like to hear from you. I know we don't have the chat feature open, but I've got a quick survey that I'd like for you to complete. You'll notice there's a QR code. So if you can take your phone, or you can open up another window on your desktop to Poll EV at K Smith Change. You can see that at the top here, or use the QR code. It'll take you to a survey and ask, where is your organization in these 6 areas in terms of their maturity? It'll be on a scale of 1 to 5, and I'd love to hear your feedback and see how it's going. Look at those surveys coming in. Thank you. We have quite a few people on the call, 542 people, so I'm hoping we'll get a lot of surveys. This is great data to allow us to see where people are. There's quite a few questions, so I won't be able to review the results with you live, but hopefully I'll be able to get some insight from you in terms of where you are in your maturity journey. So I'll give you another moment to complete that. Great, thank you. Keep it coming. We want to hear your voice. Keep it coming. Good. Thank you. So while you finish that, we will continue. And just talk a little bit about why this maturity level is important. So this is just to give you an idea of, for these 6 areas, where you and your organization may be. And then why is this so important anyway to even think about it? What's the value that you can get out of it, and how does it support your lean efforts? Some of you may have seen this before, but we call this our really the value proposition slide, because this goes back to, we change for a reason. We don't just come in and say, oh, lean is fun, let's do. There's a reason why you're doing your lean efforts. You're looking for improving that efficiency. And so what are you trying to accomplish? And I know part of the process is to understand and determine what you're going to achieve, right? So how do we feel like we can reduce cycle time? How do we think we can improve that efficiency? What is that reason that we're trying to get to? And so when you think about the process that you follow, the steps that you take, whether it's DMAIC or PDCA, there's a very process-driven technical side there you approach in terms of what this process is going to be and how we are going to go from current state to future state. We do the wall meetings, we bring in subject matter experts, whatever all of that is the technical side. It doesn't have to be about technology, but it's the project work of how we get to what the future state is going to be. And then within that, we also know that there is some metrics that determine what that success is going to look like. But just completing that does not guarantee success. We know that when we have this new process, we're not going to get to this success unless we have the people agree to engage with this new process, adopt it, and then continue to use it, right? And so it's not just about coming in the room and looking and making decisions and then maybe having a new job aid or following a new process. It's like, Now, when people are gone, are they going to continue to use it? Are they going to sustain it? Or are we going to slip back and do things the way we did it before? So focusing on the people side ensures that not only do we get there, but we stay there. And so it becomes important to determine how much emphasis and effort we need to put on that people side based on the level and effort of change. Any type of change, small or large, requires people to go from a current state, some type of transition into a future state in order to get to the change that we're looking for. And if we do change management and we do it correctly, then we have the increased likelihood of success. But if we don't focus on change and we don't give it the effort, then what happens is it can take us longer in this transition state, it takes us longer time, and it's bumpier. Notice here we've got, this is really rocky, and very uncomfortable. And the longer we're in this state, it reduces the trust that people have in the project team. It's draining on the rest of the work that we have to do in the organization. And it takes longer for us to reach our project goals and expectations. So notice it may take us months or weeks, months longer to get to future state because there's so much here going on that we're having to work through. And ultimately, when we get to say, oh, yay, we finally finished, it may look something like this, where the results are less than expected. And it's what we call a Swiss cheese effect, meaning not everybody's there. There are holes in the success, and we just really don't get the value that we expected out of it. And for so much work to go into these process improvements, you really want to make sure that once you get there, the value's realized and that people are using it, and you can go, yes, we made a difference in this team and in this organization. There's a lot of pride in that. We have found too that if we focus on change management and we do it effectively, there's a direct correlation with the success of projects. And this is directly from our research. So we ask about 12 questions that helps determine if the approach to change was poor, fair, good, or excellent, right? Once we determine where it fell, then we said, what's that correlation then to you achieving your project results? So this is from our bank of research from over 25 years, and this is the latest. And this actually increased this last year. It has been 6 times more. This year, with this research, it's 7 times more. So when we apply excellent change management, we find that people are 7 times more likely, or projects are 7 times more likely to achieve success. And what's interesting is even just a fair approach to change management, you can get 3 times greater results. And when we talk about results or being successful in the project, we're talking about meeting objectives, staying ahead of schedule, or staying on or ahead of budget. And actually, it is directly correlated to the schedule, because if we do poor change management, it often takes longer to achieve those values, those benefits and results. So we have the data that shows that. So there's a lot of value in thinking about how much change management do I need to place on this project, and then what does that look like? We also found that when we're looking at process optimization projects, because our data, we are able to drill in and say, well, what type of project are you working on? And one of those is the process optimization. And what we found was that the critical success factors in change management for process optimization actually land on active and visible executive sponsorship. So remember, we said, what does it look like when it's successful? Your leaders and your sponsors know what they're doing in terms of leading the change. they're critical in driving awareness and desire for people to understand why we're making this change. And they're also critical to ensure that we sustain the change because your people leaders are there to be communicators, liaisons, advocates, resistance manager, and coaches. And that helps ensure that you achieve success and that the benefits that you want are achieved because people are continuing to follow the new process. The structured change management approach was actually the second, having a formal way to make sure that we're not leaving anything out. And this isn't just a checklist. This is really the science of what to do and when to do it and the art of how to apply it to make sure that you are focusing on people at the right time to give them what they need to be successful. So critical success factors for process optimization. And notice here, we've got engagement with people managers, and having dedicated change management resources is not always a requirement. Oftentimes we find that especially with process optimizations and lean experts, they could play a dual role, but just making sure that there's a similar emphasis on the people side as it is on the process side. Key areas for improvement in future process optimizations, our research suggests that really that earlier stakeholder and sponsor involvement, as well as improve in the communication plan. So it's very important that those are taken into consideration as we move forward. So now I would like to hear from you again, if you would be so kind. And this time we're going to see some live results. So which of the following is the biggest improvement opportunity for you and your team and your organization? If you would log on again to the Poll EV, either through the QR code or your web application, and answer the following. And here we go. We're going to start seeing some results now. This is fun to watch, this real time. See how you line up. So it looks like quite a few on this leaders and managers understanding their role. And they do. They're very critical. I know I've worked on several projects where they've been business process reengineering or those types of projects where I've had to go back in 6 weeks later because nobody's following the new process. Nobody's going by the new thing that was created. And it was frustrating, I think, for the people involved and the leaders because they were like, they helped create, they helped design future states. And why aren't they using it? It makes sense. They'd help design it. Well, the way they're doing it today, they're doing it for a reason. And so it makes it very easy when I get back into my world and my environment that I go back to doing it the way it was because it was probably easier. It was probably faster. I already know how to do it, so I'm not having to learn something new. I can just go back to the way it was. And so it really does take that leader coming in and providing that guidance, that coaching, reminding them of why we have to do it differently and do the new way on a regular basis to ensure that it sticks. So yes, so if that's where it's most important for you, I would encourage check out our website. We've got lots of tools and resources to support you and help you build that competency with your leaders. So how do these two work together? Change management and lean really do go hand in hand because if you think about our ADKAR model, awareness is really very important in the early phases in defining and planning to begin to people understand what problem are we trying to solve, what effect are we trying to get, right? So people need to understand why in the beginning we're even looking at this because coming in and looking at people's processes can be very scary. And so building that awareness and thinking sure of why we're doing this and why it's important. And then as we get into measure and potentially that do and check, you're building desire for people to say, oh yeah, this makes sense. I really do want to make my life easier. Or I really do want to improve the way I process, or really do want to have a greater impact on the organization. You need to build that what's in it for them so they want to be a part and be engaged. From a knowledge perspective, this is probably coming in close to maybe the analyze And potentially your check and your act, depending on where you are. But you're providing knowledge and giving them the education about the root cause of things, and then helping them see the new way of doing this new process. Knowledge and then ability is really giving them time to apply the new process, practice the new process, get proficient in the new process. So going to training does not mean when they walk out of training, they're going to do it, right? They need time to operate and feel good about it and build their competence in that. And that's generally in that improve or also check and act. Because I can see with check and act, you might have knowledge, ability, reinforce, kind of a cycle going on there. And then the control phase is really about making it that landing stick, right? You are making sure that they're going to stay, that there's no regression back to the old way of doing things. So the reinforcement really becomes critical. And that's where your leaders have to be ready to deal with some of that people sliding back, and how do you pull them forward to keep them engaged. So there's a direct correlation to DMAIC and PDCA and our ADKAR model. And then the benefits, it gives you a holistic change management approach if you can integrate the two and make them a part of how you think about your process. Both models are very structured, so they lend well to go together, and actually act maybe as a rope, right? So that they're intertwined. And then it also ensures that you do have that enhanced engagement, and not just from a few of the key users, but it also ensures that you have all the stakeholder groups involved, whether it's the key user group or other people who are going to be impacted, because you're really thinking about the upstream and the downstream impacted individuals and how we help make sure they're brought along as well. And so really thinking about change management at all three levels can help you be more successful in your lean efforts. So change management for individuals really puts the person at the center. So how do we move them from current state to future state? Change management at the organizational level, it says for this particular project, how do we help this project be successful? So this lean activity, how do we make sure it is successful? And then if you zoom out even more, how do we build the organization to be successful so that all of our lean efforts are happening and they're successful? All of our digital efforts are happening and successful, because you've got a lot of digital projects going on too. You guys are facing that, not just in addition to some of this, to the process efforts as well. And some of those process efforts are feeding, right? You're having to do some of these lean efforts to get some really good process before you can move to the digital. So looking at it from an enterprise focus really does help you think about how we can all get there together on that future state. And there's tactics that help you do that. And some of these tactics you're going to hear Judy embed in kind of her organization and how she took it to that next level with the Department of Health. When we talk about building change capability, we want to make sure that it's going to align with your culture. Where does it fit? And deploy it on a key initiative. Is there something you're already doing that we could say, hey, let's come in and help you with this particular effort, and while we're doing it, we're building that competency and that capability. Create a network, build soldiers on the ground that can be successful and help promote change. It's not just up to one or two people, it's all of us working together. And then go where their energy is. I've worked with some organizations that said, hey, we want to incorporate it into our lean practices. So let's start there. I have had other organizations that say, oh, we've got this big, huge system, order system that we're putting in place. Let's start there. But the other is really integrating it in with existing competencies as well. So I did it in my organization, and we started off in the strategy office and focused on our strategic efforts. And then by year 2, we added it to our competencies for all of our leaders, that leading change became a core competency for every leader in the organization. But it's also important to treat it like a change in it itself. So if you're not doing it well today, it's a project, it's an effort, we have a reason that we need to do it. There's a current state, there's a transition, and there's a future, and we have to be very deliberate and structured in how we move it forward and how we approach it. And that's exactly how we did it with Judy. Um, and we started by saying, what is our current state? And we leverage a model. It's our maturity model with 5 capability areas that help determine where the current state is. So you'll notice this is very consistent with what we said at the beginning. How do you know you've got good capability? Based on our research, leadership, it's being applied across the board. There's competencies for everybody across the organization who know what to do and how to lead change, from change practitioners to your project managers, to your people managers, to your sponsors. There's standard ways of how we operationalize this and make it work. And then there's talk. We all know what change management is and why it's important and how it's embedded in the organization. So socialization is that buy-in and commitment throughout the organization. And we really did start there with Judy and her team and the Department of Health, the Washington Department of Health. So I'm going to turn it over to Judy to really take us through her case study so you can see this in action.
Am I on?
You're on.
Okay. Hi, I'm Judy Hall, and I manage the Office of Organizational Agility in the Department of Health. Our office supports continuous improvement lean for the organization, and we did start the agency's change management journey, which I get to share with you today. Very excited about that. We sit in a unique place, I think. No, previous slide, please, Kelly. We sit in a unique place where we sit within the Office of Innovation and Technology, and we sit alongside the Project Management Office, the Business Analysis Office, and the Innovation Office. So it's kind of a unique place to start a program like this, but we found it really helpful, and it's really helped us a lot in building some of the infrastructure and alignment with our portfolio and project work. DOH started with less than a handful of practitioners. They were spread across the organization, and there wasn't much awareness or support for change management in our agency, in our leaders. The change managers that were trying to function were really fighting an uphill battle. COVID really changed that for us. And so times of great change, times of transition might be really great times to start having these conversations with your leaders. For us, COVID changed that. As we were moving out of COVID response and back into our normal operations, our leaders were seeing change fatigue, they were seeing burnout, high staff turnover, and a lot of project distress. And so they were looking for options, and it really opened the door for conversations that led us to start our change journey and led us to be able to bring ProSci in and do some of the things that we're able to do. So I would encourage you, if you're looking at places of big transition for your agency, it's a really good time to maybe start these conversations. Just a couple of things. None of this would have been possible without the support of Les Becker, our Director of Office of Innovation and Technology, and Jessica Todorovich, the agency Chief of Staff. They provided the startup resources, the championing, and the engagement to get us started. When Kelly talks about leadership support, it's really like impossible to do an ECM journey without strong leadership support. And we had it, which was great. The other resource we had, which is Kelly Smith, my co-presenter, she did start us on our journey with our initial 5-day workshop and maturity assessment. And then we were able to engage her for about 6 months to provide excellent consultation as we set the path for our journey and started building out our program. Okay, now next slide. So what's been really helpful for us to think about change, to think about enterprise change management is this idea that, ECM does two things. First, it on the right side, it builds out the individual competencies. First, it on the left side, it builds out the individual competencies for different roles within the organization. So senior execs, mid managers, frontline employees, project managers, solutions designers, those kinds of folks, really has role-based competencies for each of those roles. And that was really helpful for us because we can start to educate on those. It also does the thing we think about when we think about change management, which is having practitioners who integrate into projects and initiatives and bring good change management to those projects. But just having the change managers wasn't enough for us. Our original goal was to increase the number of practitioners to support our large projects and organizations. That was going to be our solution. But we quickly realized, just even in starting to have the conversations about how we did that that we had barriers in engagement with our sponsors, with our project managers, with our middle managers. There was a big chunk of resistance. And so this really enterprise change management focus allowed us to build awareness and competencies in all of these different groups and their roles so they can understand what we're trying to do, what their role is in change, and can support the work that the change practitioners are trying to do. It also starts to infuse the capabilities into changes that don't necessarily have change practitioner involvement. Kelly was talking about that a little earlier. We have folks now that say, oh, I'm thinking about doing this with my team. I should probably do an ADKAR. I should probably understand where my folks are. I should probably bring them along. Am I doing coaching? So they're really starting to pick up some of the practices and principles outside of the formal change management practitioner work. So that's been a great learning for us and a great gain for us. Next slide, please. So our vision is that change management is embedded into the fabric of our organization. So it's not just something we bolted on, or it's not just a specialty role that we're bringing in. It's really embedded into the fabric of our organization to help us be more agile and able to adjust to changing needs. One of the things we learned through COVID, and we're learning as we go, is things change for us rapidly, and we need to be able to move and deploy rapidly. This helps us in that effort. We use standard approaches in our initiatives, projects, and partnerships to support the people through change, to support our people through change. Next slide, please. So in September and October of 2022, we held a 5-day workshop to assess and plan for building change management capabilities across the department. And that's how we talked about it. We had 20 members from various levels of the organization participate in that original assessment, and they rated our existing maturity, which was pretty low, right around a 1. That's that darker blue line. But they also set maturity goals for where we wanted to be in 3 years. I will just say these goals are very audacious. I had a very audacious group, and we're working really hard to get there, but I'll talk to you about how we've progressed and where we need to be going. But we set where we were and set our own goals for where we wanted to get to in 3 years. Next slide, please. So you might wonder, what do those numbers mean? What does a 1 mean? What does a 4 mean? So we were at a 1, which is change management is really seen as a distraction from the focus on it's distracting from the project. It's distracting for the initiatives. Why do we have to stop and slow down for change management? Why do we, so it's really seen as a distraction. It's really not applied at all, or brought in only as a last resort or when there's a problem. So, there's this thing's not working well, bring in change management to fix it. It was really dependent on individual practitioners to bring it up and lead it. And it really wasn't formally endorsed or practiced by managers and leaders. So that's where we started. Why I said audacious goals is where we wanted to be in 3 years. Can you go back, Kelly, please? Was that level 4, which is really seen as an important success factor on most projects. CM being applied at project initiation or planning. And it's being used by most practitioners and project teams, mini leaders and people managers, and there's potentially a centralized function, which we have a small one in our organization. So we're really trying to grow this rather quickly. Next slide, please. So when we built out a roadmap for how we wanted to get there. The first phase was really foundation building, setting up our governance, setting up our work groups, setting up our approach. And then the next I would say this has probably been 6 to 18 months, really. We've been working on business alignment. How do we embed some of these practices and processes and competencies? How do we structure things so that we've got these capabilities standardized into a lot of our practices and portfolios and things? And then our next phase will be really scaling and refinement, growing this project and growing this work and really further embedding. So next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to say something else on that last one. Our goals for the project were really to have this be a part of our project and initiative lifecycle, a really called out and standard part of our project and initiative life cycles, creating a change portfolio so our leaders could see who was being impacted by changes, and we could start to see where some of that overwhelm was happening for change, and maybe make some decisions based on what we were finding about the change impacts that were hitting different teams. We want to build it into our leadership competencies, and we wanted to make it a part of our culture so that people could know what to expect during a change. Everyone from the sponsor down to the frontline employee could know kind of, here's my role during a change, and here's what I can expect from my leadership, or the kinds of support I can get during a change. So in our first phase, we really developed our program governance, and started up our change management office. We developed our foundational resources. We developed our communication strategy, and we created our work groups to develop our implementation plans. And this is what our governance group looks like. So we have our chief of staff as our executive sponsor at the top. And again, I can't speak enough about how beneficial this has been for us to move stuff forward. Our steering committee is made up of high-level leaders representing our executive offices, information technology, our HR office, communications, and our agency deputies. So we have the leaders of our organizations represented in our steering committee. Then we created the 4 work groups that you see down below. You may recognize these from the graphic that Kelly showed earlier with the 5 capabilities. We had a work group that was focusing on how do we build competencies, how do we socialize OCM across DOH, how do we get standard application, and how do we start to standardize some of these practices and processes. For the leadership component and building the leadership competency, it's really been falling on our steering committee and our executive sponsor. So they're helping us move that work forward. I also want to, at this point, call out Jessica Ray Nunez, who is and continues to be an important co-leader and co-contributor on this journey. She is doing a lot of work with our practitioners and our training plans, and much of carrying the weight around some of that building competency work. So thank you. Next slide, please. So our initial investment, how am I doing on time? Okay. Our initial investment was really into some training. We bought some training for our executive leadership team and our senior leaders, also our deputy groups and our project managers. We did buy some infrastructure. We got some certification, change management certification for key division resources. We sent some folks to train the trainer, and we got the enterprise license. We did some planning, which was part of the ECM workshop. And we, like I said, had that 6 to 9 months of ProSci consultation service. So even though this may seem like a lot, this was a very small investment, particularly when you think about the value of our broader portfolio. This was a really small investment for a lot of bang for the buck. So we are in phase 2. And we're just finishing this out right now. And we've got many of our organizational foundations put into place. But I will call out that we have made some changes from this original roadmap. In the lean tradition, we plan, we do, and then we adjust, right? And so we are in the process of doing some of that adjusting right now. Some of the adjustments that we've seen are that building competencies across key roles within the organizations has taken longer than we originally thought it might. And we think that's going to be a multi-year effort, actually, to bring people on board. We've made some inroads, but that changing mindset, building awareness, building knowledge, and particularly building ability is taking longer than anticipated, which I think is a good thing and means it's really going to be sticking once we get it built in, as we're getting it built into place. We also needed to do a lot more work to get change management practices embedded into our project initiatives and life cycles, because we have a very formal project initiation process, and particularly for our portfolio projects. And so there had to be a lot of education about multiple parties in that to find out where change management made the most sense to fit in, what kind of tools would we bring in different places. So we've done a lot of work there. I think we've got a really strong foundation there, but it took longer than we expected. Training practitioners, probably not surprising to you all, but it's happened more quickly and easily But as you know, there's a difference between knowledge and ability. And so we've got a lot of people trained, but they're coming into the organization as new trainers. We've softened the ground a little bit for them with some of this other capability work we've been doing, but there's still lots of coaching, peer leader, mentorship, that needs to be taking place with new practitioners as they're starting our journey and starting their change management practice within our organization. Next slide, please. So this is where we are. We did another maturity assessment in January of 2024, and we have improved. We have increased capability in all 5 of these areas, which is really great. Very excited. We were really glad to see that we've made progress. But we also see the gap still between we have 2 years left, a big gap between our year 1 end and where we want to be at the end of 3 years. So we're making progress, but we really see the adoption of those role-based competencies as critical to reaching our goals. So a lot of our current work is starting to focus on building sponsor and people manager competencies in our senior leaders, managers, and supervisors. So that's going to be a lot of our focus in year 2 as we're starting to work on capability building. Next slide, please. We have made quite a bit of progress. We have gotten leadership, our executive leadership, to commit to their sponsor role. And they are assessing change during their decision making as they're looking at ideas and initiatives that they want to move forward. They're asking a really small series of questions to understand what the benefit they're looking for is and who it might impact, so that we can start to think about how we might need change management to support some of these things. We have standard e-learnings available to all our employees through learning centers. We have change impact and need for change management assessed for all of our formal agency projects. This has been a big win for us. Along with that, we've got change management included into project charters, and we've got deliverables laid out through the project lifecycle that we are putting in to bridge change management into initiatives, into project management, into our portfolio management. We have 50 new practitioners who trained across the agency. For us, that was an 85% increase, which is great. But again, we've got 50 new practitioners in the agency who need to build ability, right? They've got knowledge and they need the increase to ability. So we've launched an active practitioner network to help support them. We're looking at opportunities for individual coaching and mentoring, training, those kinds of things. So we are now in our third phase, or moving into our third phase, which is really scaling and refinement. And you've heard me talking a little bit about it as we've been looking and measuring. We've been saying, okay, we need to be doing more of this, less of this. We need to be changing here, making this more of a focus. Socialization is probably going to be a big part of our next phase. If you want to do next slides, please, Kelly. We really want to finish building out our metrics so we can talk about the success of some of this, and we can start to measure in between those annual maturity assessments. We're building out that training plan with really focusing on people manager capabilities, project manager engagement and collaboration, what project managers can expect from a change manager, how the two support each other, deliverables, those kinds of things, and then really working to increase our capacity for agency-led training. We're starting to do coaching with a lot of our sponsors and executive leadership. We've gotten a level of trust and a level of commitment and buy-in that leaders are reaching out for coaching now on projects, which is really great. We think that's going to help build that capability on a one-on-one experiential level really quickly in those senior leaders. And then, as all good improvement projects, we are monitoring and continuously improving. And we will be, at the end of this year, sort of thinking about our next steps on our journey. We will have completed our 3-year journey. And so what comes next? We'll start thinking about that as we head into year 3, reinforcement, if you will. So I'm going to end there. And thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. That was awesome. Wonderful. Okay, well, we do have a couple questions. Let's take time to answer those. The first one is, so this was a little earlier in the presentation regarding the change capability status survey. There wasn't an option for I don't know yet. So what do you recommend for new folks to get a quick understanding of their organization status, especially if there is not a change management office available to ask?
Well, that's a really great question. I would just say you're probably, if just see how things are done within the organization and use your own imagination in terms of what you see demonstrated, or talk to other people and see what they see and what their view is. When we do the maturity assessment, it is a cross-functional view. But it's not averaged. It is used to have discussion so that there is a really consensus of what it looks like across the organization. So once you get this particular presentation, you'll have those areas and you can begin to just see where you think they are and have some conversations.
I would add, I think there is, ProSci's got some really great blogs and
Yep.
webinars that talk through this and give some examples for some of these
Mhm.
kinds of things. That's a great go-to resource to sort of listen and think about how that might look in your organization.
Right. Blogs, webinars, white papers, lots of great insight from our website.
Wonderful, thank you. This next one for Judy. Hi, Judy. When trying to improve the maturity and providing training, did you find any concerns from trainees that the introduction of this training was budget related or worry of the changes to be related to layoffs?
Great question. Oh my gosh, that's a good question.
Mhm.
When we introduced, so we have been starting to bring this in to projects. So in a project context, if I'm doing like an employee training or a supervisor training in the context of a project, I often have to do that kind of reassurance. We're just letting people know about this as this change is happening. A lot of those concerns and fears do often surface in those settings. The agency trainings that we've rolled out across the agency, it's really been less of an it's really been less of an issue because it's seen as a resource that people can pick up and use wherever they are in the agency. So it's not as tied, people aren't necessarily as it's not as easily tied to their personal circumstance.
Mm, wonderful, thank you. Any suggestions on how to scale this for a very small agency where people wear multiple hats instead of a project management office and there's just one person who is also the business analyst and the change manager?
Question. We talk about this a lot, and I think it really um, depends on the size and scope of the scale of the change. So we have a graph, a chart that we use that talks about small, medium, large, and super large projects. For smaller and medium projects, I think it's you can wear multiple hats, and it makes sense to be wearing multiple hats. When you get into the large and extra large, it's really difficult to do this well and to pay attention to all the things that a PM needs to pay attention to, and a BA needs to pay attention to, and a change manager needs to pay attention to. And so bringing that awareness to your leadership, I think can be helpful for those really large, complex projects. And the super large ones, we start to make recommendations for, are we needing to bring in a consultant or is there somewhere we can get resource? Because those are usually multi-agency or cross-agency kinds of projects that really need a different kind of focus.
Awesome. I'm going to try to squeeze two in here real quick. This first one is, I think this might be short. Given where you are now, Judy, reaching the team's original audacious goals, has the team considered rebaselining the end targets?
Not yet. I want to see that's probably our year three conversations to start. Right. This was a 3 year journey. We finished year one in January. We're about almost through year two. So those will be conversations probably towards the end of year three.
Wonderful. And for some folks who have answered questions. I see that Kelly is also typing out some answers. So thank you for that, Kelly. Um, Last question, real quick. How would you differentiate change management from project management?
Well, I think they are partners. They're complementary disciplines, where change management really focuses on the people side of what do people need for awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, reinforcement. So communication, training, the support that they get from their leaders. It's really more giving them the tools they need to be successful. The project management often has some elements of change management in it, but generally it's really focused on communication and training. So there's not a lot up there about engagement, activating the sponsors, activating the people leaders. And so really it's pulling the two together and leveraging both disciplines to give you that success. We have a whole class on this, so there's a lot more to it. And I would just say I'd encourage you all to go. We've got great blogs and resources on our website to help you answer some of these questions. And actually, here's more information. Feel free to go and get anything for free that we have out there. You're welcome to.
You are awesome. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you both, Kelly and Judy, for such a great informative session. We want to thank our ASL interpreter, Kelly Brunson, and Julie Clemens, our cart captioner. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning, for being here, and for asking those great questions and giving your input during those polls. There is so much more of the conference to come, so feel free to visit results.wa.gov if you need to sign up for other sessions, if you want to go get some materials and download those. If you want to watch sessions that you might have missed or revisit sessions that you want to see again, this will be posted within a week, so you'll have to wait for this one, but I know I'll probably want to watch this again. But yeah, you'll see a survey pop up soon. Take a moment to complete that survey and we can gather that feedback, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you again so
Thank
much
you
for
all.
attending.
Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.